If you know me, there's one thing I love, and that is a good bit of irony. So I have been both amazed and amused to discover that the Yes campaign for the Voice to Parliament, which, is all about coming together, sweetness and light, a new era of reconciliation where hate and rancor are left in the past, and where we all join hands to journey to the sunlit uplands of Albo's shining city on a hill. Well, guess what? They have a dirt unit, and a pretty active one at that. By which I mean, it appears that people associated with some bits of the Yes campaign, and by the way, there are a lot of moving parts to this thing, are spending all of their time trawling through the comments of No supporters, trying to find nasty things they've said in the past. The aim is a simple one. That's to imply that, by extension, anyone else who's thinking about voting no, maybe you, maybe me, is also a nasty piece of work. Or, when they're not doing that, they're simply trying to find things they've said in the past that could be used against them now. Patricia Karvelis the other day tried to stitch up Warren Mundine, suggesting he used to support a Voice back in, when was it? 2017.
The lack of detail in the proposal has been an effective attack line for the No campaign, but divisions are emerging within that group that believes that it shouldn't get up over what alternatives that they would support if the referendum fails. Now, comments in 2017 by one of the No campaigners, Warren Mundine, arguing in favour of a Voice to Parliament, are raising more questions. Here is that prior statement from 2017.
And there's also been a big push on against No campaigner Gary Johns.
Well, I'm concerned about a whole range of comments that Gary Johns has made, not just on the weekend, but over a long period of time, when it comes to a failure to show any respect for Indigenous Australians. The fact that he's been given a significant role in the No campaign is of concern.
And Australian Jewish Association head David Adler has also copped it for suggestions he's made about Stan Grant's skin tone. Now, this is all very interesting, and as you know, I always say that there's the story, and then there's the story. And I mean, it's funny to me that as the Yes campaign, which again is all predicated on sweetness and light and relentless positivity and being kind, as it sinks in the polls because Australians are rightly suspicious of a whole new constitutionally entrenched racial bureaucracy, one where the PM, let's not forget, proudly says he has not read the long form of the document the idea supposedly comes from, and about which now social media sites like Facebook are engaging in censorship to silence anything that isn't keeping with the official government narrative line. Well, now what have they done? They've gone to the dirt units. The same sort of thing Albo accuses the opposition of using every time anything is reported from his past that the Prime Minister is not comfortable with us talking about. Funny that. But again, you see what they are doing. Here's a No person who said something that they don't like. If you vote no, you too will be beyond the pale, and maybe your socials will be dug through. Who knows? So this is why it is ironic, because the relentlessly positive Yes campaign never condemns its own. It's like the old revolutionary maxim, no enemies to my left. Take Noel Pearson. He's basically the godfather of this whole Voice campaign. He loves to speak with such stentorious gravity when he, for example, calls Peter Dutton a Judas.
The Dutton Liberal Party's Judas betrayal of our country. He doesn't mind chucking Indigenous Australians and the future of the country under the bus just so he can preserve his miserable political hide. Peter's the undertaker here.
Oh, well, real charming stuff there, but still, I guess, in the rough and tumble of politics, within the boundaries. But if the Yes campaign wants to go digging into people's pasts or slamming people for saying nasty things, what about this from Noel Pearson? Back in 2014, then Sydney Morning Herald columnist Paul Sheehan wrote this report of when Noel Pearson dropped in to that paper's newsroom. Sheehan wrote, quote, "Shortly after 11 a.m. last Friday, Noel Pearson, chairman of the Cape York Group and a nationally prominent Aboriginal leader, walked into the newsroom of the Sydney Morning Herald and approached a senior editor. He proceeded to berate the editor loudly, obscenely. He took off his jacket and told the editor he would, quote, beat you to a pulp, unquote. He also mentioned throwing him off the balcony. He dropped the C-bomb repeatedly, all in the middle of a metropolitan newsroom, unquote." Sheehan referred to a fellow Herald journal, Jane Cadzow, who had done a profile of Pearson 2 years earlier. And the opening scene of her piece was one which described Pearson berating a delegation from the Queensland government with terms such as effing white seas. Now, remember, of course, it is the no side of the debate that has problems with abuse and racial slurs. Another unimpeachably left-wing publication, The Guardian, was also in the past reported on Pearson's tirades, quote, "Queensland top education bureaucrat says Noel Pearson called him an arse coverer, maggot, and a bucket of shit as fresh accounts of his abusive behavior by the Indigenous leader have emerged," unquote. That's how the piece opened, and it continued, quote, "And the Queensland Education Minister, Kate Jones, has backed reports that in 2009 Pearson called her an effing white sea," unquote. Now, I must point out that Noel Pearson has denied those allegations, but remember, this guy is the hero of The Voice, the hero of the same people who are trawling around looking for nasty things the other side has said, reportedly making racist, vicious, nasty, misogynist comments. Look, you guys on the yes side, look in a mirror, or maybe have a look at what another fellow yes campaigner, Marcus Stewart, had to say about Jacinta Price just a few days ago.
And we have a far-right politician in Senator Napanjima Price out there spreading lies, spreading mis and disinformation. I don't think I've come across anyone that hates Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander or seems to hate Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people so much.
Aside from these guys all liking to get around in silly hats, it really does seem like it is the yes campaign, and not the no side of this, that has a problem with hate and meanness and divisiveness, despite, as they like to suggest, that it is the other way around. And with The Voice sinking in the polls, and their own backers not even able to admit that their own Uluru statement is a much longer and much more divisive document than the simple, generous request that fits on an A4 piece of paper, Anthony Albanese likes to pretend it is. So, folks, tonight I'm going to make a prediction. If The Voice goes down at the polls, which most people subject to suspect it will, though there are still, of course, millions and millions of dollars waiting in the wings from corporate sponsors who pledged the cash so they could remain and retain access to their relevant cabinet ministers. If this goes down, we will see a tantrum of the elites. Just like what happened after Brexit, just like what happened after Donald Trump won in 2016. The word will go forth that Australians are just too dumb and too racist and too redneck, and they fell for misinformation. And that is why they voted no. Not because, again, they rejected a maximalist model of The Voice that would wind up in the High Court, or because they were told to add a whole new chapter to the Constitution based on a 439-word mini manifesto / motherhood statement and told that the detail, that'll come later. Nor did they do so because they were simply uncomfortable with this injection of race into the body politic, going against the vision of Bob Hawke, who said in 1988 in Australia, "There is no hierarchy of descent. There must be no privilege of origin. We are already seeing cases now of Facebook censoring people like my colleague Peter Credlin, calling perfectly reasonable statements about The Voice, again, misinformation. And this will only get worse, and Labour will attempt to ram its Orwellian misinformation bill through Parliament, which allows the government to say whatever it wants, while censoring what opinions are shared online by you and me.